My name's Cole Mitchell. I'm a very grateful recovered alcoholic. By the grace of God and the 12 steps, I've been clean and sober since January 29, 2018. And that's a miracle, man. I spent, the first 7 or 8, the last 7 or 8 years of my addiction, I guess, in and out of the rooms of AA. And I just kind of treated this like it was a buffet thing. Like I could just come in, and really I treated it like if I'm just in the same room with these people, I can just magically have what they have by not doing anything that they did. And it turned out that experience is not true, right? Turns out there's more to the program than this. I really, really, really love Alcoholics Anonymous. I really love the program in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And as I tell my story, I'm going to be going in and out. I like to balance some solution with some of the crazy stuff that I'm going to tell y'all that I did in my addiction. So with that, I'll get started. I'm from a small town about 30 miles northeast of here called Lenora. And I mean, it's small. It's one of those towns where you have to start, if someone's from a small town here, they'll understand. I have to start with a big city. And I go, you know where Midland is? And they're like, yeah, I know where Midland is. I'm like, all right, well, if you go 15 miles east on I-20, you get to Stanton. They're like, you're from Stanton. I'm like, I wish. This story would be over at that point. But if you go 15 miles north of Stanton, and there's a little town called Lenora. It's little bitty, like you blink, you miss it kind of place. So I grew up there, born and raised. We played 6-man football. There was 19 kids in my graduating class. It's like that kind of small school. But it was great, man. I had a real close-knit group of friends. My mom and dad are both normies, so I had a really normal upbringing. I was brought up in a Methodist church in Stanton. I grew up in religion. That was a big part of my life growing up. Youth groups and church camps and, all of that kind of stuff, revivals, all of it. It was huge. Just growing up out in Lenora, life was pretty normal. But my whole life growing up, my mother had told me, my grandpa was an alcoholic, a bad one. He would show up to the holidays drunk, you know what I mean, really drunk, just crazy stuff. The other side of the family, a lot of addiction too. And she always told me to be careful with drugs and alcohol because addiction runs in our family. And, I didn't, what is it? Bill's story where he reads the thing, he's walking through the graveyard and he reads the thing. It was like a warning I didn't heed, you know what I mean? So, when I was about 16, I hurt my leg doing sports, and I suddenly was sidelined and I had a lot of free time, and I found marijuana, and I thought it was the best thing in the world. Because my whole life growing up, I always was uncomfortable, always. I always felt like I was too small, or I was not smart enough, or I'm too smart, or wherever I was the wrong place. I just always felt uncomfortable in my own skin. And the first time I got high, it was the most beautiful feeling in the world to me, that my brain turned off, right? And I finally felt like I was who I was supposed to be, And so I did that for a long time, drank shortly after that, thought the same thing, it was the most amazing feeling in the world to me. But at that time, I was playing music, and I went to school for music, and that was more important at that time. So I went to school for music. I met my wife, Jamie, there, who is still married to me somehow. I don't know how, but I'm so grateful that she's still in my life. It's bad when people in the community come up to me and they see us together, and they're like, she should have divorced your ass, right? I'm like, yeah, I know. Yes. Jesus. Yeah. But anyway, I met her there. And I'm a drummer. I play drums, guitar, bass, and I just got super into doing that. Also got super into smoking weed and drinking, too. And it became more and more important to me. Got into psychedelic drugs. By the way, disclaimer, I feel like everyone has to say this, but drugs are in my story. So it's just going to be there. I'm a drug addict also, so super into psychedelics. So drugs and alcohol just started becoming more and more important to me. And while I'm in school, I decided I don't want to be a poor musician. There's not a whole lot of money in it. It's hard to make a living being a musician. So I moved to Odessa. My family owns a store in Odessa called the Depot Pizza and Deli. And I went to work for my uncle. I was going to take over the store. And shortly after I moved back to Odessa, trying to get some weed or something like that, and a guy comes up, he says, I don't have weed, but I have Vicodin. I was like, well, what's that? And I bought some off of him. I took 2 of them, and my little life changed forever. what I said about drugs and alcohol before that, like, this was the most beautiful experience probably I've ever had in my life up to that point. Like, I like to say that the clouds parted and, like, the sun was shining on my face and the wind was blowing, and I was inside of a house, you know what I mean? Like, it was a magical experience, and I mean, it felt like it completed me, and I remember genuinely feeling like that. Like, I want to feel like this every day for the rest of my life. And it didn't take very long, months, and I'm depending on how many I could get and how much money I could get my hands on, 20, 30 a day pill a day habit. And then it quickly, progressed from Vicodin to oxys and methadone. And in the middle of all that, I started doing cocaine too and drinking a lot. And so I had saved up a lot of money working at one point, and within like a month and a half, this little nut that I'd built up was just gone. And so then I'm working at the store that my uncle owns, and I'm stealing from the store to help buy the drugs and everything else. And but it was during that time that I met a guy who was in the program. He was a family friend, and he had been sober for 3 years. He started talking to me about he knew what I was doing, obviously, and he started talking to me about his experience. And it was the first time I'd ever met somebody who had been where I'd been and done the things that I'd done. And I started opening up to him in a way that I never had to anyone else before. And the reason that is, sorry, but I need to read this. Like I said, I'm going to be in and out, so give me just a second. But the ex-problem drinker who has found the solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. That's what happened. This guy just started talking to me about himself. And I started opening up to him, and I started telling him all this stuff. And so that was the first time I was ever introduced to the program. And I went with him to some meetings, and I asked him to be my sponsor. And I really did want to be sober. I didn't understand the powerlessness in step one yet. I thought I could breeze through the step work and stuff. And in the middle of doing step work, I decided I was going to start getting high again. But I was going to keep meeting with my sponsor and doing step work, right? And so I started going to meetings and doing step work with him until it really went off the rails. It took about 4 days, and it just went like crazy off the rails. And, I decided AA wasn't for me at that time. So shortly after that, me and Jamie decided that we were going to move back to Lenora, and I've since talked to her about this. And we were with some friends, and I said, "Yeah, remember we had to move out of Odessa because I just had to get out of there. I couldn't escape all the all the bad friends I made there." She goes, "No, we had to move out of Odessa because you spent all our money and we couldn't pay rent anymore." I was like, "Oh shit, that's not how I remember the story going." But okay. So that's why we moved. And we moved to Lenora. My parents helped us out, and we moved back out there, and I started working on the farm again. But, I thought getting out of Odessa was going to cure me, right? Geographical cure. And I just ended up driving to Odessa every day, right? I would wake up in the morning, drink some, then I would have to go to Odessa and score, right? And so at this point, I was doing heroin, and she got my phone, my wife did, and she called or texted all my drug dealers in my phone and told them that she was going to call the law on them if they sold me dope anymore. Yeah. So I went from having 10 drug dealers to having 0 drug dealers. And if anyone's ever kicked opiates before, that sucks. It's not fun. And one of the guys that I was buying dope from said, "I'm not going to sell you anymore, but Suboxone's the shit, right?" And I was like, "Well, what is that? I've never heard of this before." And so I did a little research. And I think I just found the solution to all my problems, right? I'm like, I just have to take a pill every day, and I'm cured, essentially. That's what I thought in my head. So I go to the doctor, and I get on Suboxone, and I was cured. That's all I got. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Hell no. No. Not even close. I wish. No. So I got on Suboxone, and I started selling and trading it for oxys and everything else. Relapsed really bad after that, got back on it, and then tried as hard as I could. I started going back to AA on Suboxone. Don't recommend it, but that's what I did. And it didn't stick, but because around this time, I started drinking a lot more, because this is the thing that I realized in sobriety this time, actually having got sober, had worked the steps, it didn't matter what I was doing, right? I wasn't an opiate addict. I'm not an alcoholic. I just need to change the way I feel inside, right? I thought it was the pills, right? I get on Suboxone, craving for that is gone all of a sudden. Well, I'm still not well in here. It's all messed up, right? That same problem that I've had since I was a little kid is still there. So I turned to alcohol, and I start drinking alcoholically, right? It becomes a very continuous thing. And while I start drinking, I'm still on Suboxone, and I go to visit my doctor for my prescription. And when I go in there one day, he goes, have I tested you for ADHD? And I went, no, you haven't. But you need to. Right now. And he did. And guess what, guys? I have ADHD. It's crazy coincidence. It's crazy. I couldn't believe it. So it turns out it's not hard to get an Adderall prescription, and that's what I did. And and so that became like a terrible problem I had after that. I went from, I'd take the whole prescription in like 3 or 4 days, and I'm hunting the streets for him after that. And so I'm just like, I'm teeny tiny. I'm probably 115 pounds, soaking wet with rocks in my pocket. And eventually I can't find any more Adderall. And my buddy tells me to go over and see him, the guy I was buying it from. And he's like, well, I don't have Adderall, but I got ice. And I was like, okay, well, what's the difference? And he goes, Pepsi and Coke. And I was like, all right. You had me at Pepsi, buddy. I'm in. So suddenly I'm using crystal meth now instead of Adderall. Well, it's supplementing with Adderall, because I'm a health nut. It's like that. So I start using crystal meth, and shortly after that, I get fired from my job because I get into a fender bender in Odessa. I swear to God, this is true. Apparently, I backed into a car. I didn't realize that I did because I was high on meth, but and I left. And they drug tested me when I got back, and I failed for methamphetamine. Shocker. And they fired me. And after that, I was kind of scared off of it for a minute. Like I was like, I'm not gonna mess with that anymore. So I just drank and drank and drank. But I was able to get clean enough to get another job, and I was like, I will never do that again. And within a month, I'm like right back doing it again, right? And selling the Suboxone I'm on and doing all of that. I'm still living the exact same life, and I drink all the time, every day. That is this constant through all of this is that I always drink. Get another job. It takes about 9 months. Another car accident, another drug test. They fire me, right? And then at this point, I was unemployed for about 6 months. I couldn't get any work. And a friend of mine just came over to the house one day that I used to work with, and I was high out of my mind and drunk as shit. I was drinking beer in his truck when he came to see me out of a plastic bag, pretty cool. But anyway, he came over to visit me, and I'm just ripped. And he was like, "Hey, do you want a job?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And somehow got hired on with this company, and so I get hired again. And at this point, I had started to think that I needed help. I couldn't stop, but I get this job, and I just turned it up 100 miles an hour, and it is just it doesn't take me very long, and it's like a near continuous thing. Same thing. I'm scared off of it for a minute, but then I pick back up, and it doesn't take long. It just gets more and more and more and more. And while I'm there, I wreck a company vehicle again while I'm under the influence, and they don't fire me, and they don't call the cops. I don't get a DUI. God doing for me, right? I don't know. I don't still to this day. I get all pilled out. I almost get in several wrecks while I'm on the road. I have no memory of this Xanax, but and apparently they didn't fire me that either. And there at the end, my wife had told me, if you ever bring that shit in our house again, you come in lit up like that, you're done. Me and you, we're finished. And I told her, I was like, I won't. I'm done. I promise I'm done. And I meant it. I meant it in my heart, right? Inside here, I seriously meant it. I'm going to read this because it was one of those paragraphs in the book that really explained to me, why I couldn't help but do it, right? Fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice and drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. So when I told her that, I seriously meant it. Like, I don't want to ever do this again, right? And it took 2 days. And I'm right back in it. And I'm running hard. And she throws me out of the house. And I just lived in my truck. And I smoked speed. And I drank. That's all I did, right? And I still went to work. I don't know why. Like, I had a job, so I just assumed I had to go. Like, so I start getting psychosis real bad. Imagine that. That's a big theme throughout my story. But, I have like this crazy episode in my truck, and then just out there in the country, and it broke me, man. Like, this, just the weight of everything I'd been doing, and the not sleeping, the not eating, and just being so miserable and sick. Like, it broke me. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I could not keep doing what I was doing. I knew I needed help. So at 4:30 in the morning, I think I'm in a room with all these people, right? My friends. I'm not. I'm by myself. But they had been there all night talking to me. And I get mad at my friend Joby. And I was like, fuck you, Joby. I'm taking you home. And so Joby got in the back of my truck. And I drove to his house, which is like right across the street. And I see him get out of my truck and go into his house. And then I see him come out of his house with a gun, and he's pointing it at me, and I'm like, well, that's crazy. That's a weird reaction to me giving you a ride home, right? Thought I was doing the right thing. Like, and he walks up to me, and he goes, what are you doing here? And I was like, well, I'm dropping you off. He's like, from where? I was like, from us hanging out all night, like, you know? And he goes, dude, I've been here all night. Like, what are you doing? And then I just break down, and I'm like, man, I've been doing meth for years. Like, I don't know what's going on right now. Like, I haven't slept in like 8 days. I have no idea. And that's where it started for me. Like, he took me into his house, and he let me just pace around in his house. And I just kept opening beers and just drinking them. He goes, are you going to work? And I was like, yeah. He goes, well, you need to stop drinking. I was like, well, that's not going to happen. So I keep drinking. And he's like, are you seriously going to work? I was like, yeah, I'm going to work. And he's like, well, then stop drinking. I'm like, I can't stop drinking. Like, that's impossible for me. I don't even know what you're saying. And so I go to work. And I basically run out of there screaming as soon as I get in there because, people are after me. And I go home, I take a bunch of pills, and I go to sleep. And the next morning when I woke up, I had no money in my wallet. I had nowhere to live, and I did not know what I was going to do. I had a voicemail on my phone, my boss telling me to come into work. And when I showed up that day, he said, do you want to go to treatment? I was totally sure that he was going to fire me. And I was like, yeah, that was what I was going to do anyway when you fired me. Like, so, yeah, let's do that. And so it took about 3 or 4 days, and I ended up at Springboard. And that's where it really starts for me. That's the story part. Like, I like to get that out of the way fast because I love talking about recovery, right? So I show up at Springboard, and like I said, I've been in and out of AA, for 7 or 8 years, over and over and over, but I never had done anything. And my parents had tried to get me to go to treatment over and over and over, and I always was like, no, I'm good. Like, I'll figure it out. And I always could get it together for a minute, and I'd always screw it up. I show up to treatment, and I know it's 12-step stuff, and as soon as I get in there, I see big books on the tables and stuff, and I'm like, this 12-step shit don't work. I've done it. Like, you know what I mean? I've done this stuff before. Well, I start looking through it again, and I start reading, and there's stuff in there, like page 21, where it describes the real alcoholic. Like, man, I start reading that, and I just go, yeah, that really hits home. You know what I mean? Like, I'm really relating to everything that it says. And if you ever show up at an AA meeting and you start to relate to everything they say, bad news. You're probably an alcoholic, right? So I start relating to all this stuff, and I'm just like, man, that's wild. And I start meeting people that work there, and like the people I'm in there with, like we had this camaraderie because like in my addiction, I was so isolated. Like I didn't have using buddies or nothing like that. It was just me. While I'm in there, I meet all these people that are just like me, and they have the same stories as me, like just doing all this crazy shit, and then like how the way they felt and how miserable they were, and like this camaraderie. But the people that worked there had sobriety, like they had been clean and sober for a while, and they had two things that I thought were mutually exclusive. They were happy and sober. Like I didn't think you could be both. I didn't think you could be happy and sober, but they were. And I've shared this before, but so I told my dad that story one time. I was like, there's just people in the rooms, they're happy and sober. And I didn't think you could be both. My dad's like, well, you were neither of those things before. So, like, if you could have just got one of those things, you'd be kicking ass. But, yeah. So, yeah, they're happy and sober. And they're talking about God, right? And though I was raised in church, I lost my faith. Like, as soon as I got out of high school, I always had issues. I had doubts, and I had a hard time sharing those doubts with people. I thought I would go to hell if I talked about that stuff. And so when I was about 20 years old, I just wrote all of it off. I was like, well, it's all bullshit. I don't need any of it. And I was just like, I was an atheist. Like, I didn't believe in anything. I thought all religion was silly. And later came to find out that, you know, I had a resentment at God and at religion. And, you know, on your resentment sheet, when God's like the first thing on there, probably doesn't mean you're really an atheist, right? So, anywho, so I get in there and you know, they're talking about God, and they're talking about all of the spiritual stuff that I really hated for a long time. But like I said, they have something I want. They're happy and sober. And so I started listening to them. And, you know, the thing that I got more than anything was that, and there's a lot of parts in the book that talk about it, is that God doesn't make too hard deterrents for those who seek him, right? And then in this program, that you find a God of your own conception, right? And the book says, however inadequate that is, that it's sufficient to make the approach. And so that was the thing that I couldn't get from church. But I was starting to listen because, again, I'm desperate. I don't know what else to do. And these people are talking about God. And I remember being in one of those groups and looking at the steps on the wall and being like, man, all those times you were in AA, you didn't ever work the steps. Like, the only time you tried, you were high on Oxycontin while you're doing it. Like, that doesn't count. Like, and so I just remember it was like, I need to get a sponsor. I need to work the steps. So that's what I did. I went to one of those alumni meetings, and a guy there was speaking. And he had what I wanted, man. Like, he'd been where I'd been, and he had found a way out of it. And so I asked him to sponsor me, and he took me through the book. You know, and I did a lot of step work a lot of my step work in Springboard. And while I was there, you know, I actually prayed for the first time, and I asked God, you know, to allow me to be willing. I asked something. I don't know. At that time, I don't know if it was God. I just prayed to the heavens, like, just help me be willing to do whatever I have to do. And, you know, after that, like, when I'd get up, you know, the guy would come and do yoga in Springboard. Anybody, like, been there? This guy would come and do yoga, and I thought he was, like, so full of shit. I hate, like, touchy-feely, new agey stuff. And this dude is, like, lighting incense and, like, all namaste and all that, and I just thought it was so dumb. But, like, after I had prayed that, man, this guy comes in, and he's, like, you know, doing his yoga, and I hear this voice in my head be like, you said you'd do anything. I'm like, tree pose. There I am, you know? Like, and, you know, it's crazy. It helped a lot. Like, so I kept doing it. And the meditation thing, I'd never meditated before. And one of the guys that used to work there, his name was Carol, was big into it. And he kept telling me to get into it, too. He's like, if you're having anxiety, it'll help you, okay? Like, that's what he would say. That's how he talks. That's what he would say. And so I was like, same thing where I was like, I just don't understand, it's stupid. And I heard that voice again say, you said you'd do anything, right? So I started meditating. Like, between groups, I would close the door of my bathroom, sit with my back against the wall, like, crisscross applesauce, like, all that, like. And I would, like, just try and meditate, right? But like I said, the biggest realization I had was that all the times I tried to sober up before, I'd never actually gave the program a shot. So I started working steps. I started making amends. Like, when I looked at the amends, I just didn't even understand how anyone could make amends. Like, I was like, for all the shit that I had done, you know, and I'd hurt so many people. I started doing it, though, because I understood that in step one, I'm powerless, right? In step one, the powerlessness that it talks about in the book is two parts. It's physical and it's mental. In the doctor's opinion, he talks about the phenomenon of craving, right? That when I take a drink, it triggers an allergy, which is like an abnormal reaction to something. If I eat strawberries and I'm allergic to strawberries, right, my throat swells up, like I have, you know, whatever, itchy eyes, whatever it looks like, you know. But as an alcoholic, when I take a drink, I have an abnormal reaction is that I have to take another drink and another drink and another drink. And normal people don't drink like that. Normal people can have 2 beers and stop. So physically, I'm different, right? Well, if that was the case, I go to treatment detox one time, I walk out of there free man, I never think about it again, right? Well, it's mental too. The book talks about the obsession of the mind that will lie to me and tells me that it's okay for me to drink again, right? And that's how it looks for me. It looks like, man, you've been sober 3.5 years, dude. You don't need all this AA shit. Like, you're good. Have a drink. You can smoke meth like a gentleman this time. Pinky out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what my brain will tell me, crazy shit like that. And that is the obsession of the mind, right? And so I can't control it when I'm drinking, and I can't quit on my own. Then I'm totally powerless, right? And that hit me hard. There's that paragraph in the doctor's opinion where it says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol, right? That whole paragraph, it describes why we drink. We're restless, irritable, and discontented, right? Spiritually sick, that thing I talked about, right? I'm uncomfortable in here. Like, I don't know how to get comfortable. I've always felt like that. Restless. I'm easily annoyed, right? Irritable. I'm uneasy. Nothing ever satisfies me. I'm discontented, right? Unless I can again experience the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by having a few drinks that I see others taking with impunity, right? I watch someone else drink. That looks good. They're not burning their entire life to the ground either. I bet I could do that. Obsession. It's lying to me, right? And then I go on a bender. And then it talks about us emerging remorseful. We ran out of money. We ended up in jail. Whatever it is. With this, and we take this oath that we'll never do it again, right? Like I said, I told my wife, like, I'll never do it again. And it says this cycle is repeated over and over unless the entire psychic change can occur. Psychic change being a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening that it talks about in the book. I have to change entirely the way that I view the world. And I can't do that on my own. On my own, I am doomed to die an alcoholic death. The book says that to drink is to die for us. It's just like that. That's what it says in the book. And I had this powerful experience with that paragraph where I understood 100% that I cannot ever stop doing this, right? It says alcohol is a subtle foe, though, and that's what it talks about. And so I have to continue to do this. So I worked steps. And in step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I believed that y'all believed that would work. And I could see the proof on y'all. I'd come to Serenity and talk to Ryan. Ryan had been sober for like 9 years at that time. And I was like, that's insane. Like, how can you do that? And he's happy. And he's sober. And he's involved. People like that. Like, I see these people here and they're doing the deal. And so my step 2 experience was I was willing to believe that they believe that there's a God that can restore me to sanity, right? And so the group kind of was my higher power. And it evolved from there as I worked the steps. In step 2, I made a decision. And that's all it is a decision. That I would go through the rest of the work, right? And God's will, in my experience, is to stop thinking about myself all of the time, right? It's to do for others, to sacrifice, right? It's just that simple. Do the next right thing. But in step 3, it was just a decision, and that's all I did. I made a decision to make the rest of the steps. I took inventory. I did a 5th step and talked with somebody about it. 6, 7, 8, 9, and then I got into 10, 11, and 12. And 3 months, I started sponsoring somebody for the first time. And that's where I really found the beauty in this program, right? I'm going to read another part to y'all real quick, but the reason I like this part so much, it's in working with others. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. And then the 12th step promises say, life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. It's an amazing experience. Getting to sponsor people, getting to see someone like Nate, who, by the way, was out of his mind when I met him. Crazy person. But so was I. I related when I met him. Like, I could feel that. Like, and as soon as we started talking, we bonded immediately. But, like, getting to see someone come from where they were to where they are today is the most miraculous thing, and to get to be a part of it and understand that all I am is a vessel for the message, right? That I didn't have anything to do with that. God did. God allowed me to get sober and gave me the life that I have so that I can help other people. And it is an amazing gift, right? And as soon as I embraced that, I took to it. And today I still sponsor a lot of people, and I love it. Like, it's one of my favorite things about the program. It's just an amazing thing to me. So I get sober. Life is really good for a long time, right? And I continue doing what I'm doing. In about 2.5 years, I get real lazy about all of this stuff. I stop praying as much. I stop going to as many meetings. I start thinking I'm kicking ass and taking names, and it's all about me, right? I get wrapped in the bondage of self that it talks about in the book again. When I say selfish, I mean like I'm thinking about myself all of the time, and I get really sick again. And turns out, though, that a bunch of my friends did too, kind of at the same time. And so we started doing this step study thing together, and it was really cool, and I got a lot from it, but I was still sick. I started talking to my wife. So my wife has handled our finances for a long time, and you can imagine why. And that was the stipulation when I got out of treatment, right, is that she was going to do that. And if I was going to go back there, that no more relapses, or it was over between us. And I said, okay, but on my side, I have a lot of work that I have to do to stay sober. So, but as far as the finances, I was like, that's fine. Well, I think I had just gotten 3 years sober, and I was like, man, I'm telling her, I got 3 years sober. It's kind of a big deal. Like, I feel like I'm owed a little bit of respect, and I think it's time for me to take over the finances. Like, it should be my responsibility now. I'm the man of the house, right? I'm just, I went down that path. And I just started I just am pushing it and pushing it because I really don't want to talk about it. Can we not talk about it? I was like, no, we need to talk about it. Like, I need to take care of this stuff. This is my, and I'm going. She goes, I don't want to talk about it. It's like, and she goes, Cole, you royally fucked me financially for 10 years. We almost were homeless because of you. I was like, oh, okay. And she goes, you can write that on your fucking resentment list. Ouch. Okay, and I did. Turned out that I was not as spiritually fit or spiritual as I thought I was. And I started writing inventory over it. Not just her, but like a lot of things. It turns out that I had all this stuff that had just built up, right? The book says resentment's the number one offender, right? It kills more alcoholics than anything else. And that's what happened. Like, I just let all of this stuff built up. And that connection with God got smaller and smaller and smaller. And it was getting to be more about me. And although I hadn't drank or used, I had thought about it a lot, and I was acting crazy, not just to her, but to a lot of people. And I'm really grateful though. An old sponsor got us into this step study thing, right? And it was a few of my close friends, and we start doing it, and I realize how sick I am, and I get into the inventory thing, and I reestablish again, and just realize like that's the solution. That's always the solution, right? It doesn't matter how long I've been sober. Obsession will still come back. The craziness will still come back. It doesn't matter. It says this is a process that must continue through our lifetime. And from that point on, I made a very, very big point to pursue God every day, no matter what. Prayer, meditation, all of it. I'll be honest. I get an honest program. I don't meditate as much as I'd like to. That's 100% transparency right there. But the prayer and the reading and the talking to people in the program and sponsoring people and making sure I make meetings. And I took a position here at Serenity. I'm the treasurer of the group. All right, like I just got more involved in everything, and life got better again. But it's just an example to me of how sick you can get in recovery, because you totally can, and it happens all the time. But my life today is night and day what it was 3.5 years ago. When I showed up at Springboard, I was like 118 pounds, like dripping wet. I looked like a zombie. I had, peeled skin off my face. I looked horrible. And no money, and I was a broken, lost soul. And I just did what people suggested, and my life completely changed today. God restored my family when I got out of there, and I'm so grateful for that today. I have 2 kids. I have a daughter, a 13-year-old, and a 7-year-old son. And this year we found out that we have another one on the way. And it's really cool. Yeah. It's really cool. And it's weird because I started talking to Jamie. I was a terrible father in my addiction, right? And I started telling her, I was like, it really bums me out because I feel like my daughter was born and then there's just like this huge blank spot. And then she was 10 years old when I got sober. And it was hard for me. And even my son was like 4 when I got sober. And it was hard for me. I was like, I just feel like I missed them growing up. And I guess God heard that conversation. And we're having another little one. And it's been an amazing thing. And as soon as it happened, I just was like, I see you. Like, you give me another chance. Like, and I really, it's a cool thing. Another cool thing that happened this year was that we bought a house. Like, amazing. Like, I remember when we walked through the house, I didn't even like look at anything because it just didn't even seem like a possibility to me. Like, we walked through the house and I was like, yeah, this is cool for somebody. Like, but like, there's no chance. And then we ended up buying the house, and it was really cool. I got a good job because I was able to stay sober and be a hard worker. I am a hard worker when I'm sober. That's another thing I figured out. Like, I'm an intelligent, able-bodied person, and I found all this out because I got sober. And it's just been really cool. But all of those things are a direct result of me reaching out for recovery. Like, they didn't have anything to do with me. That was God doing for me what I could not do for myself, right? And that goes far beyond just my sobriety. That goes out into every aspect of my life. As long as I carry him with me, and I carry this message to people that need to hear it. Because truthfully, y'all, I don't like speaking in front of people. It makes me nervous. Like, it does. But I love recovery. I love helping people. And if there's just one person here who gets something from this, that's why I did it. Like, so, I'm almost done. Trying to think about how I'm going to wrap it up, actually. I think I know. The last part of the book. This is a suggestion, and this is what worked for me, man. Even if you don't believe this will work, or you don't think there's a God, just try it. Like, what do you have to lose except the worst problem you've ever had in your entire life? You know what I mean? That's my suggestion. It says in the book, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Thank y'all.